Avalanche remain red hot. A last-minute win for the Boston Bruins. Things still looking rough in Edmonton. We'll talk about what's going on there. Plus, we have a full preview of this weekend's action. Lots of entertaining games coming up. All that and more on this episode of the Locked On NHL Podcast.
Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Gil Martin here with you on the Friday edition of the Locked On NHL Podcast. Usually Rachel Donner co-hosts with me. She's a little under the weather. I hope she feels better ASAP, and she should be back, I hope, next week. And we have got a lot to get to on today's show. Lots of action from around the league. A last-minute win for the Boston Bruins. The Panthers continue to play very well, as do the Boston Bruins. They got a last-minute goal to win their game last night. We'll talk about all of that, plus Edmonton continuing to struggle. And boy, do we have a full slate of games coming up this weekend. I want to thank everybody for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. We have got a lot of games to discuss. We're going to start with what happened in Boston. The Bruins edging the Washington Capitals by a score of 4-3. And that game went down to the wire. It was pretty impressive. And you know, the Bruins just continue to do well. And, you know, David Pasternick, 2 goals, but Charlie McAvoy gets the game winner in the final minute. Now, how red hot is David Pasternick for the Bruins? 10 goals in the month of January. That's 10 goals, 3 assists for 13 points in 11 games this month, which is most among NHL players. And boy, the Bruins really playing better hockey as of late, trying to solidify their hold on one of the playoff spots in the Eastern Conference. And yet, you know, they right now have the final wild card, but they are going to try to do more. And it's not, you know, just Pasternick who's doing well. Brad Marchand, in his last 11 games, 16 points, 9 of them goals. The 9 goals places him second only to his teammate Pasternick in goals in the month of January. So, you know, the Bruins really, really finding their stride here this month as they continue to play well. How about the Florida Panthers? I mean, here is a team that just continues to play exceptional hockey. They shut out the Edmonton Oilers 6-0, 40 saves for Sergei Bobrovsky in order to earn that shutout. And, you know, it's a tale of 2 teams headed in very opposite directions right now, because the Panthers, one of the best teams in the league, not getting all the credit that they deserve based on the fact that they're a sort of a recent expansion team in an untraditional market. They usually don't get a lot of media attention. It's time. This team is that good. And Bobrovsky really refinding his form this year. A 40-save shutout, very impressive. But the team they beat, the Edmonton Oilers, really in disarray right now. And, you know, nobody would have thought that they would be this bad for this long after the very strong start they got to this season. And with the amount of talent they have up and down this roster, I guarantee things have to change in Edmonton, because, you know, this team just isn't playing cohesively right now. And, you know, you could see them squeezing their sticks. When you get 40 shots on goal and don't have a goal to show for it, well, that is indicative of problems in your organization. And right now, it's just you could talk all you want about COVID. You could talk all you want about the goaltending. Right now, everything is just out of sync for the Edmonton Oilers. And even their great goal scorers, the Draisaitl's, the Connor McDavids, they're not playing up to their usual standard, but the secondary scoring is dried up, the goaltending, the team defense, the special teams isn't going well. Right now, it's everything in Edmonton. And I just have a real feeling that changes are going to come to that organization sooner rather than later. Another team, though, that is struggling right now, the Philadelphia Flyers, they lose to the Columbus Blue Jackets 2-1, 10 games without a win now for the Philadelphia Flyers. And they, this is just another slump for the Flyers because no matter what, it just seems like the Flyers just struggle. And, they change coaches, played a little better for a little while, and now they go on a second extended losing streak this season. Look, the Flyers not going to make the playoffs, I don't think, unless they can really, really turn things around. I got to watch them twice this week because they played the Islanders Monday and Tuesday. And, they're not a bad team. There is talent on this team, but they just don't seem to have the depth. And right now, they just aren't playing good enough team defense overall on a game-in, game-out basis to sort of sustain things. And I don't think that the Flyers will continue to lose a lot of games like this. There is too much talent on this team. But again, in Philadelphia, things have got to change. They've got to start thinking about rebuilding for next season. And I think they will indeed be sellers at the trade deadline. The Avalanche keep winning. They beat the Los Angeles Kings by a score of 4-1 yesterday. And the Avs just, again, on a roll. And I got to give credit to the Colorado Avalanche. They are playing some pretty darn good hockey right now. And it's a situation where, they're first place in the Western Conference with 57 points. They have points in 11 straight games. And they are just, finding themselves. McKinnon, in the last 11 games, 6 goals, 18 points, which is just very impressive. And, gotta give credit to the Colorado Avalanche for what they've gotten done. A little record setting going on for the Nashville Predators. Roman Josi had 2 assists as Nashville skated to a win in their game yesterday, 5-2 over the Winnipeg Jets. But with those 2 assists, Roman Josi now the all-time assist leader in Nashville Predators history. He has 358 career assists. That puts him ahead of David Legwand as the all-time assist leader for the Predators franchise. And, the Preds, again, one of those teams that is just kind of quietly moving on up and playing some good hockey. So, congratulations to Roman Josi. He is now the all-time assist leader in Nashville Predators history. We'll talk a little bit more about last night's games, and we'll start to look ahead to the weekend. And we'll talk a little bit also about the injury situation in Montreal, which just keeps on getting worse. Lots more to talk about on the Locked On NHL podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. It's a new year, and that means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. And Built Bar makes it easy to stick to your New Year's resolution because it tastes so good, you'll actually want to eat it. Unlike other protein bars, they could be chalky or waxy or taste like a chemical spill. I mean, Built Bars are covered in 100% chocolate, and most Built Bars contain just 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, and 4 net carbs, but they pack 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. And there's so many great flavors to choose from. You could have coconut almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream. I love the salted caramel. That's my favorite, sweet and salty at the same time. Mint brownie, so many more. In fact, Built is always coming out with new limited time flavors. So check out Built.com to see what's new. Head over to Built.com right now. Use the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Very entertaining game last night between the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Ottawa Senators. Pittsburgh coming away with a 6-4 win in that game. And, the Penguins had a 5-1 lead after 2 periods. And then the Senators make their comeback, pulled to within 5-4, but could not finish it off. An empty net goal basically gives the Pens the win. But it was an entertaining hockey game, especially the third period, when you were sort of wondering, hey, are the Senators going to make this incredible comeback? And look, home winning streak for Pittsburgh hits 6 games. They're now in third place in the Metropolitan Division. They passed the inconsistent Washington Capitals for that spot. Chris Letang now has 9-game point streak, 2 goals, 14 points in that, in that streak. And that's very impressive. But, give a little credit to the Ottawa Senators. They did not quit. And yeah, they're still nowhere near a playoff spot this year. They're not a playoff contending team, but the Ottawa Senators are playing better hockey, I would say, in the last 3 to 4 weeks at least. And I like the fact that this team is sort of regrouping and playing better hockey as of late. And it does matter that they are finding a way to bounce back, and you see progress in the rebuild. Vegas edged Montreal 4-3 in overtime, so a nice 2 points for Vegas. But for the Canadiens, the news just keeps getting worse, it seems, no matter what happens. It's unbelievably frustrating. They now find out that Jake Allen, their goaltender, originally they thought he'd be out a week. Now it's 8 weeks for Allen, and it's going to be even more challenging for the Canadiens to compete. They still don't have Carey Price. They hope to get him back by the end of February. Now Jake Allen out for 8 weeks. This team really hurt by injuries, hurt by a whole lot of things, and the new GM really does have his work cut out for him at this point in time. So we're going to take a look ahead right now. Now that the NHL has rescheduled a lot or all of those postponed games, there are no nights or very few nights where there's only 1 or 2 games. Excuse me, Friday night, not typically a heavily scheduled night in the NHL. And yet, there's 8 games on tap for tonight. And the big one off the bat, the New York Rangers heading down to Carolina to face the Hurricanes. First place in the Metropolitan Division at stake in this one. And it should be a very entertaining game. Both these teams playing much better hockey. The Rangers had the comeback win the other day. And Carolina, quietly, Carolina and Florida, just 2 teams that deserve a little bit more respect than what they're getting. Now, the 2 Florida teams on the West Coast right now, the Panthers visiting the Vancouver Canucks tonight. That's a 10 o'clock Eastern start. And then in a game that features a lot of skilled players that I think is worth talking about, the Tampa Bay Lightning heading to Anaheim to take on Zegras and the Ducks. And, that should be a very, very entertaining game as well. And, Nikita Kucherov has been red hot. He's got 4 straight games with multiple points. And the Lightning have a 4-game win streak. Kucherov returned to the lineup on January 6th. 4 goals, 11 points since then. And in his first 9 games this year, 5 goals, 15 points. So Nikita Kucherov, red hot, and really a difference maker for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So that should be an entertaining game. And, a Metropolitan Division matchup also, Pittsburgh heading into Columbus. The Blue Jackets won last night. They need to get back on track quickly if they want to maintain hopes of fighting for a playoff berth. And the Penguins, as we mentioned, have been red hot. Dallas Stars in Detroit, while the Arizona Coyotes face the Islanders. Islanders starting to play better hockey as of late. And, they now have a 7-game homestand before the All-Star game. If the Islanders can, let's say, put together a 4-1-2 run or better on that homestand, they're right back in the fight to get a playoff berth. So that should be interesting. And they've got to take advantage of a game against a team like Arizona, who's playing better as of late, I must say, but is still struggling. And then Minnesota at Chicago, that game should be a good one. Blackhawks starting to come around a little bit in the Wild. Inconsistent, but very talented and in the thick of the fight for the playoffs there. We've got a lot more to talk about. We'll have the whole weekend schedule, Saturday and Sunday. Lots of games coming up, and we'll talk about those. All that and more still to come on this episode of the Locked On NHL podcast. This episode is brought to you by your friends at BetOnline. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. It's a new year, and they've got a new updated desktop and mobile website. So sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to get started. That's locked on, one word. And yes, betonline.ag will give you that 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit because you listen to the Locked On NHL podcast. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports, so check out BetOnline, where the game starts. So, there are matinees, and again, we've talked about how hot the Bruins are. The Jets still trying to figure themselves out at 17, 13, and 6, but not out of the playoff picture. It's going to be tight in that division. So a win on the road in Boston would be huge for them on Saturday. Also Saturday, John Tavares and the Toronto Maple Leafs heading to the UBS Arena to face the New York Islanders. And Islander fans still haven't really forgiven John Tavares for leaving them. A lot of anger still there. This will be JT's first visit to the Islanders' new arena, and a challenge for the Islanders. They're playing Friday, as we mentioned. So they have a back-to-back, while the Leafs will have 3 days rest coming into this one. But always a lot of emotion when John Tavares comes back. The fans will boo him every time he touches the puck. But this game against Toronto, a challenge for the New York Islanders, no question about that. The Canadiens visiting the Avalanche. That game, a battle of teams headed in opposite directions. Colorado 27-8-3, firing on all cylinders. Montreal 8-25-6. And again, losing they're down their top two goaltenders. Ottawa visiting Washington. That should be an interesting game. Again, the Senators playing better hockey as of late. And we've got a good rivalry game, Chicago and Minnesota. Blackhawks, after a lot of turmoil early in the season, they sort of righted that ship, and they're closing in on NHL 500. The Wild playing some pretty darn good hockey and in the thick of the battle for, first place and playoff seeding in that division. Battle of Alberta also renewing itself on Saturday. Calgary visiting Edmonton. Look, if the Edmonton Oilers can't get up for a game against their cross-province rivals, they're not going to get up for anything. Edmonton now only 2 games above 500. They're 18-16-2. Calgary 18-11-6. The Oilers need to get off the schneid, end this losing streak, while Calgary is, the playoff race is going to be tough in that division. So Calgary needs all the points they can get. And yeah, okay, it's not the 80s and the 90s when this rivalry was at its peak, but you give me Calgary, Edmonton, that is one of the great rivalries in the National Hockey League. And I so many great names played in that rivalry, and it's always intense. The fans are always in it, and it's a good thing to watch Edmonton and Calgary go at it. Busy slate of on Saturday there. On again, more games than usual. A 5-game slate. To me, one game that stands out the most: St. Louis visiting Vancouver. The Canucks, since Bruce Boudreau took over as coach, have righted their ship, playing much better hockey. They're now at NHL 500 at 18-18-3. St. Louis 23-11-5. They sort of get lost in the shuffle a little bit, but this will be an entertaining game, especially since it is in Vancouver. That's a 10 o'clock Eastern time start on Sunday. The LA Kings facing the New Jersey Devils, and one good game on a Sunday matinee that really have to highlight: Winnipeg in Pittsburgh, an Eastern Conference team hosting a Western Conference team. Winnipeg could really get some momentum going if they can beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, but the Pens have been red hot. And how about this? The Florida Panthers on Sunday will continue their West Coast swing. They're in Seattle to take on the Kraken, and the Kraken ended that losing streak. So they're starting to play some better hockey as well. Although, as an expansion team, they still have a long way to go. What you want to see when you're talking about an expansion team like the Kraken is that they find an identity, and that by the end of the season, they have chosen some of the players on this team who they can build around and build a future around, and that they have a philosophy in place and a style of hockey they want to play. I think we're starting to see that happen in Seattle, but they have tough game on their hands. Florida scoring goals almost at will as of late, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Wanted to also discuss the NHL's decision to end testing of asymptomatic players in February. Sort of have mixed feelings about this. I mean, to me, you want safety to be the primary factor in the NHL's decisions. But I read that roughly 72% of the players in the league have had COVID this season. And I'm not sure if that's the exact number, but it was a very high number. So I understand to a point why they feel that asymptomatic players, it would be safe, relatively safe to do that. But I think it's more important to err on the side of safety. And because asymptomatic players can spread COVID, it makes sense in my mind for them to conduct those tests. But that's the league's decision. They now have very little margin for error as far as scheduling games is concerned, because, they've postponed all the games they feel they needed to because of COVID. Probably should have postponed a few more. But hey, if another COVID outbreak does take place, if there's another variant, the season either would be truncated or they have to push it past April 29th, which as of now is the date the season is supposed to end. So we'll see what happens. But to me, the important thing is the safety of the players and their families, and we'll see how that breaks down. I want to thank everyone again for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets. It's your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets is hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. Want to thank everybody for listening today. I am Gil Martin. I'll be back on the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, which I do every week. I'll have 3 of our local experts on to talk about the biggest stories from around the league. Want to, again, wish Rachel a complete and speedy recovery. Hope she feels better. And I want to wish everybody a great weekend. Have a great weekend, everyone. And thanks for listening to the Locked On NHL podcast.